Roisin.
Hi, Geshe Tashi. Hi, hi. How are you?
I'm well. I'm
good.
Well.
Good.
And yourself?
Yeah, fine, thanks.
Good.
Yeah, well.
Yeah.
Is everyone safe there, Geshe?
Last few days we have, the monastery is free from new cases. We have some cases before, a few days ago. And a few days, 3 days ago, we vaccinated monks age between 45 and 18, got the first vaccination.
Amazing.
And also all the Tibetans around the monastery, also between that age, vaccinated. So in terms of the vaccination, it is going well. So, the age above 60 all got the both jabs, and age 60 to 45, some got both, some got first, and between 45 to 18, they got all first jab just 3 days ago. And that is something
amazing.
big achievement under Indian circumstances. And yes, that is something. But as you may have heard from the news, the second wave is slowly, coming down, but it is reaching more towards the rural area, and that's not that easy to detect, and not that easy to, people to get to hospital or anything like that. Those facilities are very, very basic in the rural area. And within the, difficult, it is not that bad. In the second wave, we lost one monk, as I mentioned in my previous week, and a few got quite serious, but they all recovered. And yes, it is not too bad, I must say. And hopefully things will get slowly better. We are very much completely, not just the monastery is completely closed down, but the individual houses, they just live individual, they don't travel. So the administrators, few group of monks, they go and they distribute vegetables, fruits, and all the basic needs to the individual houses. And today, I think still they are doing that ceremony. Today they distributing, I think today they are distributing vegetables. I think so. Yesterday they distributed fruits. So they go around to the different houses. And that is a big challenge because houses have different numbers of monks. Yes, we are doing all our best. And so there's no any group study program like debating or anything like that. Of course, individually they may do the memorizations and so forth. Otherwise, there's no group study program. And that is the situation. Okay. Yeah. So we will start this session.
So we'll mute everyone and then to unmute yourself.
Oh, yeah. So we are reading this beautiful prayer written by this great Tibetan master, Sukhavati. And, when we start the day or when we start an event, either routine activity or special, unique event, when we participate with our body, speech, and mind, it is very, very helpful, useful to participate with a positive mind, constructive intention, and that we all know very well how helpful and useful to have that kind of mind. And so here, once again, I'm encouraging not just you, but also to myself, to participate this gathering with a positive, a constructive motivation or intention, such as the mind, very strong, clear mind, taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, and also the altruistic awakened mind, bodhicitta. And to have these two minds, part of our, mentally to participate to this gathering, or mentally to carry on our daily activities from the morning at the end, going to bed, before going to sleep. Having, as a Buddhist, follower of the teachings of the Buddha, and within that many of us follow the Bodhisattva and the teachings, then having these two minds, part of our, participating these activities will be extremely helpful and useful. Therefore, as I have shared you many times, really to train our mind, to train ourselves, to become these two minds, to become part of our everyday way of thinking, way of planning, and way of experiencing the world individually and collectively. And to do that, to become that kind of very deeply ingrained in our psyche, then we need to really understand, not just understand intellectually, but also from the heart. We need to understand the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, more detail and more depth, that we understand the qualities of the three jewels, our conviction, or sometimes the term is used, faith in three jewels, we will become stronger because of that understanding of the great qualities. And also the understanding of our, this unenlightened existence. Though, fortunately, luckily, we were born as a human, and therefore we have this amazing internally and externally conditions to enjoy the life and to learn, encounter these great teachers and their teachings. Still, we are not free from under the power of attachment, aversion, and ignorance. And many of our activities of the body, speech, and mind, intentionally or habitually, are very much driven by these three poisons, very intentionally or subconsciously. So we are not free from these, under the power of these two, and because of that, we experience their consequences. So that understanding, our current nature of our current existence, unenlightened existence, under the the existence which is part of dukkha and the origins of dukkha, more detail and more depth, and more seriously, that understanding we have, our yearning, longing, desire to go for refuge in three jewels will become stronger and very solid, and that is really something very important. And because of that, I repeat this almost every time when we come together. And the second, the bodhicitta, mind of enlightenment. Many of us have heard the benefits of having this mind. Many of us have received teachings from many great teachers, including like His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, the Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where he mentioned the benefits of having this mind, bodhicitta, and understanding the benefits, very convincing, understanding the benefits of having this mind. Our current mind turning into bodhicitta, the altruistic awakened mind, how helpful, how beneficial to ourselves and to others, then this will, lead us, that understanding will lead us to train our mind to hold bodhicitta, at least in a prayer, at least in an aspirational level. That is really something important. So always when we come together, we read these 4 lines, refuge and bodhicitta lines, and we will do that. And important not to become that reading, saying the lines, just like in a form of ritual, in a form of just, this is how we start the class. Not in that manner, but in a manner of really deep sort of feeling, deep understanding the refuge, and then have the refuge, mind taking refuge, and hold the bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. So we'll read together those 4 lines. Sanje chedan soje chanamala chanjo pando dane jazo che dage jinso jebe so namaje dola penje sanje dobara sho. Sanje chedan soje chanamala chanjo pando dane jazo che dage jinso jebe co namanje dola penje sanje do para sho sanje che da co ji cho namanda changju pado dane jiao su je dagi jin so je be co namanje dola penje sanje do para sho oh yeah. So then, instead of to do a short silent meditation, instead of that, we will say together the Chandrasic mantra, the 6th syllable, Om Mani Padme Hum. As you know, the brief, the main meaning of this mantra is holding the great compassion and wisdom, realizing emptiness. The union of great compassion and the wisdom realizing emptiness, and that is the meaning of this mantra. And this mantra is the deity that represents, or deity that is embodiment of all the enlightened beings, great compassion, Chandrasic, or Avalokiteshvara. And when we say the mantra, the people who are able to imagine Chandrasic, either the 4-armed Chandrasic or 1,000-armed Chandrasic, you can do that. And people who are unable to do, don't worry about that. What is important is, from our heart, with a strong compassion to all living creatures. That means very sincerely and clearly, feel and think that, all living creatures be free from suffering and the origins of suffering. And if there are anything that I can do, that living beings, sentient beings, free from suffering and origins of suffering, I will act and I will do that. And like the great compassion, and like the great Chandrasic, the Avalokiteshvara, that my entire activities to the living beings, for the sake of living beings, act with the compassion like the Chandrasic, and holding that. And then also you can imagine your, this, the union of compassion and understanding of emptiness in the aspect of lines reaching out all living creatures, and due to that they are free from whatever challenges, difficulties that they are going through. So do that kind of visualization, or hold that kind of mind while we are saying the mantra. Om Mane Oh, yeah. Thank you. Oh, yeah. So last week we didn't have the class. So our reading covered, finished that in the copy, page 87. At the end of the page 87, we finished reading the text. And so far, just briefly recall what we have read. We have read the first two verses, which are, first one is Geshe paying homage to Buddha Amitabha. And the second verse, Geshe explains what he is going to write, a prayer to be born in Sukhavati, which is praised by Buddha many occasions, and he will write that that prayer as much as he can, and those are the two verses. And the next two verses are the verses which are very important verses. That those two verses are explaining, as I mentioned earlier, relation to taking refuge, having the mind taking refuge. It is important us to have the understanding of nature of our current existence. And these two verses very very clearly they explain those two first two noble truths of dukkha, suffering, and noble truth of origins of dukkha. And the first four lines to explain the second noble truth, which is the origins of dukkha. And the next four lines explains the noble truth of the dukkha, which is very dramatically explained, and that that understanding must be applied to our own existence, our own existence. And when we apply that, the meaning of these 8 lines, those two verses, verse which starts saying, all knowledge of right and wrong covered by layers of ignorance, as those two verses, which when we apply those meaning of those two verses, what we'll have a clear understanding of the Buddha's, the teachings on the first two noble truths, and that is here very, very relevant and important. And then next two verses are helping us to visualize, to imagine the in front of us, the Buddha Amitabha, and the two main disciples, Manjushri Avalokiteshvara and Vajrapani, and then requesting them, and also surrounded them by those other Buddhas and great Bodhisattvas. Then in front of them, then requesting them to remember the promise they have done while they are in the training, and so forth. And that is those verses that we had covered. Then the next, what we have, the page 87. Then we have in front of Buddha Amitabha, Charesi, and Vajrapani, surrounded by all those great enlightened beings and bodhisattvas. And then we make the prayer. In this section, the prayer is, with all the virtues that we have created in the past and the present, ourselves and by others, and due to the power of all those virtues, to be born ourselves, soon after our consciousness depart from this life, soon after that, be able to, by the 8 bodhisattvas, lead us to Sukhavati, Pure Land, and to be born in there, Sukhavati, not just to be born there, and to receive all those great teachings from those great teachers in the Sukhavati, and not only to receive those teachings, by receiving the teachings, then have the strength and the power and the determination to be, to go to the places wherever, the living beings, sentient beings are there to serve them, which in many different forms and in many different ways. And that is really very much part of this, and this part of the prayer. So our today's reading is, we will have 2 verses. In the middle of this, we'll have 2 verses. These 2 verses are more or less summary of the prayer that we have done so far. In page 87, that is so far what we have done, which I briefly made the summary. So the 2 verses, first I will read in Tibetan. Namshi tse duje tongwana, korso kyauso korbe ebame, mige lamdo sawa tongyone, tedam nyingje dagyu kangwarsho, parde nawa sharwa gyumatam, gyasejege mano lamdende, dewa jendo gene jubayi, madashingi dowa jenjurjin. So that those are the 2 verses in Tibetan. And now, in English, page 89, those 2 verses are translated in English. And as I've just said, quite often these 2 verses are, say in, as a dedication, as a prayer, when we are requested, to say prayer for the people who passed away, in a certain extent, these that we are going to read in English, these 2 verses are more or less summary of, this, the text that we are reading, the prayer that we are reading, like a more or less a summary. And as I just mentioned, traditionally, or still we do, if we can't do the entire prayer, just say these 8 lines, So, namshi tse duje tongwa na, in other words, when the time comes that our consciousness is departing from this life, namshi, when tse duje, tse is life, duje, ducheva, ducheva literally it means coming together, compounded, ducheva. In this case, our consciousness and our body, due to our previous positive karma, were born in this human life. So our consciousness, conceived with human body, and these two together come together, compounded, ducheva. Ducheva, what is compounded? Our human body and our consciousness, due to the previous positive karma, come together. Now these two are separating. Current consciousness, when the death come close, death is now close to, then our consciousness is ready or going to separate from this body. Che duje tongwa na. Tongwa literally it means leave or depart or separate. Our current consciousness leave or separate from this body. When it says, when the amalgamation of this life are spent, I don't know exactly what does that mean in English, but in Tibetan that is the meaning. Then the second line, which is we have already mentioned in the previous more elaborate visualization. We pray and we said due to our all the positive virtues, wholesome deeds, be able to and strong faith or conviction, and then able to have a vision of those 8 bodhisattvas similar to that. So Namshi said, the Buddha Amitabha, to see that when that is starting to happen, and we are able to see, the Buddha Amitabha surrounded by all those great beings. Koro is the retinue. Gyatso is meaning of huge, like an ocean. Rabame is the Buddha Amitabha. So to see, to have the vision when our consciousness is departing from this life, then have the vision that Buddha Amitabha with the huge numbers of other great beings. Miki Lamdo Sawa Tongyone. Miki Lamdo means, although the I consciousness is not that much function at that moment, but in Tibetan, Miki Lamdo, that means, when we close our eyes, some of those are past, either very happy sort of memories and images come very clear. very vivid, like that. Make it Lam Sawa, very clearly view, clearly see that the Buddha Amitabha sounded by all the retinues. Make it Lam Sawa, Tongkyune. Tedang Yingje Dagu Kangwasho. Teba convictions or faith, which we saw earlier when we look at more detail. Yingje, deep compassion. Dagu, my mental continuum. My mental continuum be filled with strong faith or conviction and compassion when having that visions or view of Buddha Amitabha sounded by all those great beings, enlightened beings, when my consciousness departing from this body. So that's the first verse. So may I plainly behold in my path of vision, Buddha Amitabha, encircled by a vast entourage, and may my mind be filled with faith and compassion, and that's how it is translated. So here it is that kind of visualization, that kind of prayer, when my consciousness starting to depart from this body, starting to separate from this body, from that moment, had the vision of Buddha Amitabha sounded by all those enlightened beings, and the same time, my mind, my consciousness, my mental continuum is filled with the faith or conviction and compassion. So that is, we need to train ourselves. We need to meditate, visualize. That is here. Then the next verse, Pardonawa Shawa Yumatam. So then the Pardonawa, the moment the vision of intermediate state is occur. That's how it happens. When our consciousness separates from this body, departs from this body, the next stage is intermediate state, Pardo, in Tibetan. Pardo in the sense, between the past and the future lives. So our consciousness departed, separated from the body, but has not got the next life. So between that is Pardo. So the moment we have the appearance of intermediate state, Pardo Nawa Shawa, Jumata. The moment Jumata, Nawa is appearance. And there are lots of explanations about different appearances during the intermediate states, according to individuals, previous lives, the actions or the activities. Nawa, that appearance. Sharwa, having that appearance. Gurmata, the moment that appearance of intermediate state is occurred. Nawa Shaw, Gurmata. Geshe Tashi Manor Lam Rim, and that's what we already have earlier. Moment that happens, then those 8 bodhisattvas, Geshe Tashi, by the 8 bodhisattvas, showing the unmistaken path, unmistaken the way. Geshe Tashi. Geshe literally it means the son of the victors. In other words, bodhisattvas, those 8 bodhisattvas. Geshe 8 bodhisattvas. Geshe Tashi by the 8 bodhisattvas. Geshe Tashi manor. That means unmistaken Lam Rim, showing the way, showing the path. Geshe Tashi manor Lam Rim. Dewachandu Jene Jubai. Due to showing the unmistaken path by these 8 bodhisattvas, the moment the bado or intermediate state is occurred, then the origin so to be born oneself, to be born in Sukhavati, like the instantaneously, like the very very here they translated Sukhavati, born in Sukhavati, manifestation. Yeah. So there was Jene Jubai, Madashingi Towa Tenjuji. So oneself to be born in that Sukhavati, due to bodhisattvas showing the unmistaken path, the moment the path occur, moment we born in that Sukhavati, oneself immediately sort of, to become meaningful, helpful, useful, to serve living beings. Madashingi Towa Tenjuji. By that, those be able to living beings, to be those living beings who are born in unfortunate realm, to be led to a pure land. So that's what here, the second verse in English, it says, once the Bhado visions have appeared, may I be shown the path by the 8 bodhisattvas. And born in Sukhavati, may I, by manifestations, become a spiritual guide for impure realms. So as we saw in the previous, those the loose lines, we saw that for example, once born in Sukhavati, may I gain immediately the power of Dharani memory, meditative concentration, objectless body-mind, inexhaustible confidence, and countless other qualities. That's what here, the summary, that what we see. So these two verses are very much like the summary of the first part of this prayer. First part of this prayer is to be born, due to those virtues, oneself to be born in Sukhavati with the help of those, having those visions of Buddha Amitabha, with the help of those bodhisattvas, and to be born in Sukhavati, what oneself will do to serve living beings, wherever help is needed, and so on and so forth. And that is first part of the prayer, and these 8 lines are summary of that. Now then the next part is saying, in case I'm I'm unable to be born from after this life, when my consciousness depart from this body, if I am unable to be born in Sukhavati, then what is the next sort of option, or the next to be happened to me, when I moved from this life to the next life? So there are, in other words, kind of two stages of, in the prayer, there are two stages. The first stage that we already done, that is saying oneself to be born in Sukhavati, and so on and so forth. Now then, after these 8 lines, then in case if I, unable to be born in Sukhavati, due to the conditions are not there, all the right conditions are not there, then what kind of next option, or what kind of the things that we would like to happen. And this is the next part of the prayer which is going to happen. And here what we will have is, again, the Geshe is giving us a very nicely, beautifully, like a very much going through Lam Rim, going through Lam Rim. In the Lam Rim, as you know, gradual path to train ourselves gradually, in the path to attain enlightenment. And what we'll have in the Lam Rim, there is this step-by-step training ourselves, step by step. And this next part is very much in that according to that kind of the model, or that kind of passion. So I will read a little bit from Tibetan first. 대답이 고방초 마토베 깨와 탐제 도왕 대외 댐바 롱나 또바라 터바당 삼바 공바 남바를 타바 주베 댄샤다 토바 주지 댄댄 투리기 연된 둔지 겐다 메테와 주지 대답이 내가 탐제 도양 문지 내 지다와 신도 템베 세럽 템바 토바 주지 yeah, so I will read. So the first part, it is very clear in English. So I'll read in English first this time, then I will give a little bit my explanation. So in here it says this: should I not attain such exalted state, may I in every life incarnate solely in a form capable of engaging in authentic study, contemplation, meditation upon scripture, and practice of the Buddha Dharma. So that is the first step, which is really talking about, in certain extent, this is the realistic prayer. For us, this is the realistic prayer. The first part is really we all hope, but I'm talking about my case. I'm not sure when my consciousness started to depart from this body, whether my consciousness, or I'm able to have vision of Buddha Amitabha, or completely confused, and I don't know. So I can't. But what I can do from here, yes, to really put into whatever opportunities there, to use this current, this, life, as here Geshe have said, this is one important, here in Tibetan it says, in English is in every life incarnated, every life, and that is really something useful. And many of, particularly people, and I've met many Westerners, have very strong conviction in Buddha Dharma, in the teachings of the Buddha, but very, very challenging and difficult to understand, the existence of future lives. Almost everything what we can do is in this life. The teachings of the Buddha is extremely helpful, useful to make this life very constructive, very meaningful. I think it's great. That is great. But it is, I think, quite helpful and useful, just in case, there's life after this. Then we should prepare for that too. As we prepare for tomorrow, for next week, for next month, for next decade. Though we all don't know whether we will be here tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, next decade. But we do prepare. And that is very much common sense, a very good thinking, very helpful thinking. And that is what very difficult to have a very convincing sort of interpretation, explanation, scientific explanation, and so on and so forth. But as His Holiness quite often says, His Holiness Dalai Lama quite often says, believing there will be many lives in the future, have a less question, more answer than not believing. Not believing is completely blank, or saying, I don't know, don't have that much explanation on that. And that's what here, this for me, when I read this afternoon, when I was preparing to read this part, the word in Tibetan, and here in English translated, in every line. So that is something, although I cannot imagine what kind of life that I'm going to have in my next life, but I should prepare. Mentally, familiarize, whatever that solely, and then it says, in a form capable of engaging in an authentic study, contemplation, and meditation. And that is those three steps, which is not unique, the Buddhist way of training ourselves. I think it is very much Indian, the spiritual, more than 3,000 Indian spiritual tradition, how to train ourselves. Here it says, study in Tibetan, sam, gom, listening, contemplation, and meditation. In this case, with the here it says scripture and practice of Buddha Dharma. So the entire this scripture and the practice of Buddha Dharma. When we say Buddha Dharma, when we talk about Buddha Dharma, then there are two kinds. As many of you know this, the two kinds. When we talk about Dharma, Dharma, the first one is verbal, either or we can say writing in another form. Longdang tope dangnito. Long is the oral, the verbal, that oral explanation, teaching. Tokpa, realization, realizing, understanding. So the what is his name? Vasubandu. Yeah, Vasubandu, around 4th century Common Era, great Indian master. In his Dhamma Kosha, 8th chapter, and at the end of the text, that he summarized in a very beautiful verse. Dömbe tamju namnite longdang tope dangnito. Dinzi cheba ma cheba droba cheba konayin. So dömbe tamju namnite. Dömba here Buddha, the historical Buddha. Tamche means the Dharma. Namnide, the two kinds. So the teachings of the Buddha, or the Dharma, or the teachings of the Buddha are the two kinds, two types. Döme tamche, namnide. Long dang tobe dangido. Long, that means oral, verbal, that teaching, or writing, long dang. Tokpa is realization, dangido. So the Buddha Dharma is an entity of these two, the oral teachings and the realizations. Longdang tope dangido. Denzin cheba ma cheba. So how to uphold the Buddha Dharma is again upholding the Buddha Dharma with regard to the oral is through Tenzin Cheba, Tezin, listening, reading, writing, explaining. That is how the oral teachings are upheld or continued. Tenzin Cheba, Ma Cheba. Duba Cheba Konain. The realization, upholding the second, the Buddha Dharma, that is the realization. That is through, training or through practice. Through practice, then we'll have the realizations. And, that realization, how to uphold the second, kind of Buddha Dharma is making sure within ourselves to have the realization. And to have in order to have realization is through practice. So that is here beautifully put it. And how to do that? Then these three, listening, contemplation, and the meditation. When we do these three, then we are upholding Buddha Dharma fully and completely. Both kinds of Buddha Dharma, oral teachings and the realization. And that's what here, it is saying. Authentic study, contemplation, and meditation upon scripture and practice of the Buddha Dharma. So this is scripture are translated oral teachings, and practice of Buddha Dharma, that is the realization. So how to oneself, whatever life that we have in the future, all those, every life, after this or from this, be able oneself to become a person to uphold the Buddha Dharma through listening, contemplation, and meditation. So this is the first part of the prayer. Then the next, may that form be endowed always with the 7 desirable features of higher realms. So this, so in order to uphold the Buddha Dharma with the listening, contemplation, and the meditation, then that life should have internally and externally those conditions, those favorable conditions. So in Lam Rim teaching, we're talking about precious human rebirth. Why that part of the teaching is important? If we have that kind of life which internally and externally to have the leisure and the opportunity to practice, to listen Buddha Dharma, to contemplate Buddha Dharma, and to meditate on Buddha Dharma, then that life is called precious human life. If those conditions are not there, then that is not precious human life. Even if we have a human body and human mind, if those, what is explained in Lam Rim, those 8 freedom and 10, the 10 opportunities, those 18 features, if they are not there, even if we're born in human, then very, very difficult to have the condition, right condition, to listen to the teachings, to contemplate on teachings, and to meditate on teachings. To meditate in the sense to put into practice. So these, here it says 7 desirable features of higher realms. Generally those 8 leisures and 10 endowments in Lam Rim, which but there are these counting the 7, what you call the 7 features of higher realms. That is really, talking about have a what you call the sharp faculty, sharp faculty, and our sort of body. Our body is our, the senses. Our, these are what you call capable to understand the teachings. Then also to have the external, what you call the conditions, like if we are completely destitute, in terms of our basic necessities, then it is very, very difficult to have time to practice Dharma, because entire our time and the energy and resources just to spend on to get those basic necessities. For example, even in this 21st century, there are millions of human beings, men, women, children, just, their life, their daily life is fully, occupied to search what to eat, and what to feed their children, and to have some clean water. In that condition, very, very difficult to have the opportunity to practice Dharma. And also, another one is have less illnesses. If our body, sometimes, if our body constantly get, those what you call the physical illnesses, then again, mental, even though external conditions are there, but the body is not that capable to, our body is not that sort of constantly, have pain and difficulties. Also, the long life. If life, even if you get a life, a human existence, but not having that kind of relatively long period of time, then again, short period, we won't have that much. So these are the seven, the desirable features. But the best here is just think about those in the Lam Rim, those 8 freedom and 10, the opportunity or endowments. Just look at those things, and that is here the second. Then the next is in every such existence, may I gain the memory that recalls perfectly all my past lives. This is something quite seems quite important. Recalling not just our past lives, but also, for example, for me, recalling or remembering what I've done yesterday is difficult. Even difficult to remember what I've had this morning, but I can remember this morning what I had to my breakfast, because I had a big what you call the monk who is serving me, helping me to, to give me breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So this morning he make a very, big, this Tibetan, which I'm starting to enjoy, with the Tibetan, tsamba, the flour, roasted, not barley here, roasted wheat and some other grains mixed and then made flour, and we put some butter tea, and so he made a big one. So I had quite a big. That's quite heavy usually because it's completely, so I remember that. But usually we have a difficulty to remember. So recalling, it seems sometimes it seems it is very important part of our spiritual journey in certain extents to really to have some kind of continuation. If we recall, if we are able to recall what kind of past life that we had, that may help us, that will help us, to prepare for the futures. And that's also something seems quite useful to have. And this is also part of that prayer. So I will leave here because then the next part is going through detail on out of the three what you call the three aspects of the path to enlightenment. So technically called renunciation, bodhicitta, and the right view. This will come, so the next, it's starting from that part. So I will explain that in our next Sunday class. So I will leave it here. Okay. 6. Oh yeah. Thank you. Oh yeah. Now we'll say the 21 Tara prayers and then dedication. Om Je Je Ma Pa Do Ma La Cha Se Cha Se Do Ma Nyu Ma Pa Mo Che Ne Ke Je Lo Dan Ta Jig Den Sum Ge Chu Ji She Ye Ka Sa Che Wa Le Ne Jo Cha Se Dong Ge Da Wa Gun Do Kan Wa Je Ne Se Be She Pa Ma Dong Da Cho Ba Na Ma Ye Rab Do Che We Ra Pa Ra Chanze Seng Chone Je Je Peme Chane Nambara Je Ma Ba Zundu Kato She Wa Soba Samde Ju Nye Ma Chanze Te Shin She Be Odo Tae Nambara Jawa Che Ma Ma Lu Pa Ru Jimba To Be Jawe Se Ji Shindu Ten Ma Chanze Do Da Ra Hong Ye Ge De Da Cho Da Nam Ka Ka Jigden Dongbo Shabji Nende, Leba Meba Guba Nema, Chanze Jajin Mela Tsamba, Longla Natso Wanju Chema, Chongbo Rola Tisa Namanda, Nijun Soji Dune Tema, Chanze Teje Chadang Peji, Paro Chogo Rabdo Joma, Ego Yinjang Shabji Nende, Mebara Choba Shindo Para. Chanze Turi Jigba Chenbo, Du Pao Nambara Chungma, Chugi Shene Chonye Denze, Tao Tamje Malu Sema, Chanze Kunjo Somzen Chage, Seme Toga Nambara Malu Chogi Kulo Jembe, Rangi Regi Sonama Chema, Chanze Rabdo Gawa Jebe, Uye Regi Tenwa Bema, Shibara she to da rai, de da ji wando zema, Chanze Tashi Dongwe Tsona, Tamje Goba Numa Nyema, Tonye Yewa Yege Honge, Pongba Tamje Nambara Drama, Chanze Dawe Dombo Ude, Gemba Tamje Shindo Parama, Rebe Trene Weba Mene, Daba Shindo Wera Tsema, Chanze Kebe Ama Meta, Barwe Tengwe Une Ye Yang Yung Gomukune Koroke, Taye Pune Nambara Joma, Chanze Sashi Mala Chage, Teje Nujin Shabje Doma, Chonye Chenze Yege Honge, Remba Dumbo Namne Gema, Chanze Dema Gema Shema, Yange Deshin Juyu Nyema, Sowa Omda Yanda Dembe, Deva Chenbo Jomba Nyema, Chanze Kune Korova Kave, Taye Lune Nabara Gema, Ige Jubangane Bebe, Reba Hongle Droma Nyema, Chanze Ture Shamni Dabe, Honge Nabe Sabi Nyema, Rera Menda Radang Beje, Jiden Somna Yewa Nyema, Chanze Hai Tsoye Nabe, Reda Tajen Chana Nama, Tara Niju Pege Yege, Dena Ma Le Pane Sema, Chanze Hai Tsonama Jebo, Tada Meam Je Dema, Gune Goja Gawa Jege, Zeda Mela Ngenpa Sema, Chanze Nima Tawa Jebe, Jinye Pola Vero Sema, Hara Niju Tudarai, Shindo Tabe Rimne Sema, Chanze Tini Sumnam Gube, Shive Tudang Yanda Dema, Dudang Rongla Nujun Tsona, Chomba Dure Rakcho Nyema, Zawe Ngati Deba Dita, Chanze Wane Niju Ta. Gewa Di Jioge, Sonama Yishe Tsozo Shen, Sonama Yishe Le Jongwe, Tamba Kuni Tobara, Chanjo Semcho Rimbo Che, Maje Panama Jejo Je, Jeba Nyamba Meba, Gongne Gongdu Pewa, Kari Rave, Korwe Shingamade, Pendan Dewa, Malu Jungwene, Jenre Sewa Tenzen Jaso, Shabe Sede Paru, Tenjuro Che. Oh, yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Geshe.
Have a good
Very
day.
much.
And
Thank you, Geshe.
Thank you, Geshe.
Tuchina, Geshe-la, Tuchina.
thank
You.
you. Thank you.
I'm glad to
Thank
hear
you,
you like
Geshe-la.
Tampa again, Geshe.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you,
Okay,
Geshe.
thank you very much.
I've seen weather forecast, and it seems you're going to have a good weather next few days. So enjoy. I'm not sure all over the UK. Also, I don't know in other part of the world. But anyway, regardless of whatever the weather, enjoy.
Will do.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Will
you.
do.
Oh,
Thank
see
you.
you. See you next week. Yeah.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye. Bye bye.
Bye-bye, Geshe. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.